Order. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on. Approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I so move.
Oh, okay. We're finishing the roll call. Everybody's clicked in. All set?
Yep, we're missing 4. Supervisor Thornton, Supervisor Carvina, Supervisor Eisenhuth, and Supervisor.
Alrighty. So we have motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Members of the public wishing to be heard. I'm going to do a little explanation here quickly. So if somebody from the public wishes to speak on issues at the public hearing, that will come at the time of the public hearing. If you want to speak on an issue that's on the agenda other than that or another time period, now would be the time to come forward. Do we have a list?
There is no members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay. All righty. Seeing no members of the public wishing to speak, we will move to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda passes. Public hearing, we will move to CDBG CV Micro Enterprise Grant Program public hearing, and Mr. Schultz, will you do some introductions?
Good evening. My name is Randy Schultz. I'm the county administrator. Keep on people telling me I forget to introduce myself in case there's someone new. So I'm going to have Toby come up from West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, and she'll go through the public hearing.
All right, thank you. So I'll give a background on the project first. In March of 2021, Chippewa County was awarded a grant from the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Program to provide funds to alleviate the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on small businesses in a 7-county region in west central Wisconsin. The CDBG CV program, as it's shortened to, is a federally funded grant program, which it is administered by the state at the Department of Administration. As part of the federal requirements tied to the CDBG CV grant, the county must hold 2 public hearings. The first public hearing was held in February of 2021, prior to the submission of the grant application. Today's meeting is the second public hearing, and its purpose is to review the project's performance and to invite the public's comments on activities that have been completed. The project commenced in the spring of 2021 after the receipt of the CDBG award by the county. The West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission has been hired to administer and implement that program. The project established a micro enterprise grant program, which is providing up to $5,000 grants to eligible small, lower moderate income businesses in Barron, Chippewa, Clark, Dunn, Eau Claire, excluding the city of Eau Claire, Polk, and St. Croix counties. The purpose of the program is to assist the hardest hit small business owners to help them weather the impacts of COVID-19. Applications from businesses have been accepted, and the Commission is currently working with the Department of Administration to distribute those funds to the business grantees. In total, there were 180 grants applications that were received and determined to be eligible. The total amount of funding that is going to go out to those businesses in terms of the grant award is about $891,000. All funds are expected to be provided to the business owners by this fall, with project closeout slated before the end of the year. Now I would like to have any public comment regarding the project performance, views on the CDBG program, or to ask any questions about the project or the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Do we have any members of the public?
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no public input, then we will move to close the public hearing for CDBG microenterprise grant. Number 8, public hearing. We will call that to order. This public hearing is on the redistricting.
Good evening. My name is Doug Clary. I'm the Director of the Planning and Zoning Department, and I was part of the redistricting committee to help set up the new boundaries for the supervisory districts in Chippewa County. As part of that, we had to wait for the census data that was given to us by the federal government through the state of Wisconsin down to us, and we received that data on August 16th. So from that time to today, we were working on putting together these maps, working with that redistricting committee to come up with an option for the county board, which would be considered the tentative plan for those county supervisory districts. As you know, every census, we need to revise those, and it's based on the population. In August of this year, the county board adopted a couple of resolutions, one to set up that redistricting committee, and two to set the county board members from 15 up to 21. So an additional 6 county board supervisory districts. Essentially what that did then, based on the population, was knock our target supervisory district representation down to about 3,157, exactly on the money. And then as part of that, we had to use those census blocks that the federal government put up, attach all those to the supervisory districts. This whole thing, if you've never seen the census blocks, actually looks like a big jigsaw puzzle. Actually, they're really small pieces, the 4,000 kind that you do not want to do at home. They give us, each one of those has a number on it, which represents the residents within that census block. Then we come back through with the redistricting committee. They set up criteria for us to follow to put those jigsaw puzzles together within Chippewa County to create these supervisory districts. That, once again, that target number was 3,157. In a perfect world, it will work out great. However, one of the criteria that we had to set up so that we could follow these lines, or to put these lines in, was the municipal boundaries of the municipalities. Now, if you're thinking about it, we have 32 municipalities in the county, 23 are towns, 4 or 5 of them are cities, and then 4 or 5 are the cities and are the villages. When we divide up that number, we are able to go plus or minus 5% on that number. So 5% above or 5% below to get us to a 10% threshold. So we aren't able to, in all situations, follow municipal boundaries. So then we went into our next criteria of looking at populations that have similar characteristics, or looking at those roads network, or within the waters, the creeks, the streams, the Lake Wissota, or the lakes, in order to divide those lines up. With that, we produced a map, we meaning actually Dennis Falkenberg, who's here with me tonight, was able to use a computer program that was set up by the state of Wisconsin that allowed us to grab those jigsaw pieces and combine them into the districts. So with that, I will turn it over to Dennis to kind of go over the map that you see within your packet or actually, excuse me, on your iPad as well as on your desk as option 1 at this point in time.
Thank you, Doug. My name is Dennis Falkenberg. I'm the GIS coordinator for Chippewa County. I work down in the planning and zoning department. I'll take a few steps back here just on how this came about and a few of the steps that we went through in working with the different municipalities and towns, trying to create something that they'd be happy with as well with the data that we had. So originally I received the data, like Douglas said, about August 16th, was it? I started working with it just a little bit, just to get my feet wet, I should say, with the program. And I started working with City of Chippewa Falls right away because the city is large. And when you look at the statutes, the state statutes, the city could no longer do their elections the way they did before. A ward can have up to 2,100 people in it. And if you average out the city's population, you'd have 2,104 for each of the 7 wards. So they could not do that any longer. So I was able to work with the city quite extensively because the rest of the county hinges a lot on what the city decides to do. So a ward can be up to 2,100, and we have 3,100 for what we're looking for supervisory districts, and those two numbers don't go too well together. So we worked pretty extensively together with the City of Chippewa Falls, and we came up with what you see on that map right there, especially in the Chippewa Falls area. But I also was working with the City of Bloomer, Sandy Fryan up there, and tried to get something that they were satisfied with up there as well. And listening to what the redistricting committee had for council for drawing it together, the municipal boundaries, like Doug said, were the number one thing to follow, which with that plan 1, that option 1, it was 22 of 32 of the municipalities were kept entire, so they weren't split in any fashion. And that's the map you're looking at. When we presented this to the committee, redistricting committee, this was the best information we had at the time. And we had one little issue, especially that we were looking at with the deviation. We're supposed to keep within that 5% plus or minus. And if you look at it, district number 6, which is the town of Ruby, Colburn, Arthur, and Getz, turned out to be minus 6.84%. So that was a little bit low in what we were looking for deviation from the perfect number. So we talked about that, discussed it at the redistricting committee, and also how the fact that that wasn't that compact for a district. And there was also discussion of the city of Stanley wishing to have something a little bit more on their own for a district of their own. So then last Friday, the meeting was last Wednesday that we came up with this one, that was sent to the county board. Last Friday, I sent a message down to the Legislative Technology Services Bureau. And the gentleman down there said that I was able to do something with the Stanley Prison census block. So all the population for the prison was assigned to one block, which means that the entire population for that prison would have to go to one supervisory district. The prison itself actually sits on 2 different census blocks with 3 dorms on one side and 2 on the other. We were able to work with the Legislative Bureau down there, and we're able to reapportion the population for that prison to more accurately fit what is there. And that allowed us to do what you can see on the map here for option 2. The biggest thing with option 2 is going to be down in that southeast corner, of course. That makes Stanley basically has a supervisory district on their own. And then it's all of Edson, all of Boyd, and a portion, the eastern half basically, of Delmer would be a supervisory district. And then the district number 6 gets a little bit more compact, which is another one of the criteria that we had from the redistricting committee. And it's everything in Estella, south of 64, Colburn, Arthur, and Getz. And then if you'll see with district number 2, that one actually came out perfect now. North of 64 and Cornell turns out to be a perfect district population. So with this plan, we have 21 of 32 of the municipalities are entire, and the town of Delmer is split, but their population is over 1,000, so they would have to have 2 wards anyhow. So that's just one possible solution for Delmer, for their wards on that side. Doug, did you have comments on it? The percentage? Oh, yeah, and the percentage on this one, that was a big point as well. So with option 1, the deviation was 11.6%. With option 2, the deviation is 8.43%. And the number that the state tells us to aim for, with one person, one vote, is 10% deviation. So that's where we hit on this one.
Okay. I guess at this time then we'll open it up for public comment. Is there any members of the public wishing to comment on this? Okay, no one signed up. Then we will close the public hearing on the redistricting. And we will move on to the reports, general reports. Planning Commission.
Evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to present tonight. My name is Lynn Nelson, and I am the Executive Director of the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. I'm here tonight with Toby Lemahue. You've heard from her once already, but she is our fund manager, and she really works with our business finance programs. And we'd like to take just a few minutes to talk to you about the work that the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission and the Regional Business Fund have been conducting in Chippewa County. Chippewa County pays a fee to be a member of our organization. So I think it's important that we report back to you and tell you, here are some of the things that we've been working on in your county. And it's also a good reminder that we're here and of the services that we provide. So as you go about your work throughout the year, you think of us and pull us in as we might be a good fit to help you out with different projects. I should point out that there's a packet of information for you at your desk, and it was in your electronic packet as well. That provides our annual reports for both of these organizations, some information on a program that Toby's going to talk about, and I think most importantly, our business cards, so that if you have questions after the meeting or as you're doing your work, you have our contact information. So to start off real quickly, and we're going to keep this short because we know you have a full agenda, but some background information on the Regional Planning Commission. We are a planning and technical assistance agency that was established under state statute in 1971. We are one of 9 regional planning commissions in the state, represented by number 9 on the map, and we cover 7 counties in west central Wisconsin, inclusive of Chippewa County. We're governed by a 21-member board or commission, and it's made up of appointments, 3 appointments from each of our 7 counties. Here's the composition of that board. You may recognize some of the Chippewa County representatives, as 2 of them at least are in the room, so thank you for your assistance. We have a staff of 14 people. That number has grown a little bit over the years as we've tried to be responsive to the needs of the region. And that's good news to the county, all of the counties and Chippewa County, as we have more resources and expertise to bring to the table to assist you. The overall goal of our organization is to assist units of government in planning for the physical, social, and economic development needs of the region. And we do that through services provided through 4 programs: economic development, transportation, community development, and conservation and mapping. This slide shows some of the things that we've worked on in Chippewa County recently. We've worked on an economic development administration for the business incubator in Eau Claire. That also is in Chippewa County. They were looking to construct a new building, and Chippewa County was a strong partner as part of those efforts. We've also worked with the Northern State Fair Association on a FEMA application for a community safe room incorporated on the fairgrounds, with the Chippewa Falls Shared Ride Taxi administering that program, a comprehensive plan update for the city of Stanley, a Chippewa Valley bike map, and staffing to the Chippewa Eau Claire Metropolitan Planning Organization, and also staffing to Rain to Rivers, which is a nonprofit organization that educates citizens and businesses on ways to keep waterways clean. What isn't represented on this list is the technical assistance and educational outreach that we conduct, which is something that's a little harder to quantify, but really important, because we are there when anyone throughout the county has a question or needs assistance, pick up the phone, provide our expertise, attend meetings, and that's what often leads to these types of projects. So especially during COVID, we've been very engaged in making sure that we have a good handle on the resources that are available for units of government to assist with recovery, and additionally for businesses, so that they could access resources that are out there to assist with recovery. And that's the last item on the list, is staffing assistance to businesses through loan and grant programs. And that is what Toby is going to provide a little bit more information on.
So a little deja vu, the micro enterprise grant program was one of those grant programs that we assisted businesses with. We talked about this at the public hearing. It was up to a $5,000 grant for those businesses that were impacted, that also met certain criteria. So they had to have been small, income qualified, and also had to have a COVID-19 tie. The grant funds could reimburse for operating costs related, again, to COVID-19. In total, this was that 180. It's a breakdown by county of those grants are the businesses that applied for grants and that were eligible. So you can see where Chippewa County fell within the mix of the 7 counties. This is just percentage-wise, too, of that same data. And another program that the Regional Planning Commission has been administering in again, the same 7-county region is the Main Street Bounce Back Grant Program. This is a program that the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation just rolled out about a month ago. And we're, again, the regional administrator in our region, so that would be all of Chippewa County. This is another grant program to provide up to $10,000. Well, it provides just 0 or 10, so $10,000 to eligible businesses. Those businesses are moving into previously vacant commercial spaces, and they're now occupying those. The time period in which that occupancy would have had to have occurred is between January 1st of 2021 and looking forward to June 30th of 2022. Although the funds are going fairly quickly, so I'll also say with the caveat of until funds are diminished. We have, just as a sidebar to these slides, we've had 38 businesses be approved for grant funds already within this program, and as of today, we've had 110 applications. We're taking those through a monthly review process. You do have a flyer in your packet, so if you do think of any business that you think might be eligible for that program, I would have you urge them to contact me. The applications for that program are both on the Regional Business Fund website and the Regional Planning Commission website. Otherwise, they can email me for that information too, or if they have any questions. And then another thing that the Regional Planning Commission does is they provide staffing to the nonprofit Regional Business Fund. So not grants with this program, but loans that are made available to businesses in that same 7-county region. We're here to assist those businesses that cannot get traditional financing from a bank or a credit union. We have a separate 9-member board of directors that oversees that nonprofit. We have 7 total loan programs. Those are detailed in your annual report that I provided to you on the Regional Business Fund. I'm not going to go into detail about those. And just a quick highlight of those Chippewa County businesses that did take advantage of Regional Business Fund financing in 2020. There's a few listed there for you, and then also in 2021. And with that, we would take any questions on the Regional Planning Commission, Regional Business Fund, or any of the programs we talked about.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the county administrator review and update, preliminary review of this 22 budget.
Thank you, Chair. So I think some of the county board members are probably getting used to seeing this. I think it's the third year I presented it this way. First of all, I always start out with this is preliminary. We do not have our shared revenue numbers yet. We should get that. We hope this week. So we'll be able to finalize the budget. But with all the information we have, we think our shared revenue comes in pretty close each year. So the first thing we look at is the tax rate. Obviously, the tax rate is what everybody's really interested in. How much is some people call it a mill rate. How much is that going up or down? With the current budget that we're proposing, the tax rate would go down 16 cents. So it'd go from $3.26 a thousand to $3.10 a thousand. You can see the equalized valuation went up $549 million, and that's what helps reduce our mill rate. So if our equalized valuation goes up and our tax levy doesn't go up as much, then our tax rate goes down. So everybody likes their tax rate to go down. I think we're in the bottom 10% on, I think we're like 6 or 7 we were last year on our tax rate. So we'll see where we come in this year if this holds true. But good numbers. Again, people like to see that tax rate down. So the second box that we have on there is the allowable levy by the state. So we're allowed, I think it's been 10 or 12 years already that we've been in zero levy limits, which means we cannot raise it by a percentage. We can only raise it by net new construction, which is the difference between new construction and devalued property. So that's what we're allowed to go up. As you can see, last year in 2021, we were 3,438 under the levy limits. This time we'd be about $12,052. Again, we still need to get our final numbers to dial that in completely. That's what we're anticipating right now. Then the next page, I think, is really something I started years ago, actually, but I think it really boils down the budget. So you can see each department, you can see the difference between tax levy from the previous year to the next year. And then what I normally do is just go down the columns and just give you some highlights. If I don't mention the department, it means that the money that is changed in there probably was just our PCR, our personnel cost report. But obviously I'll answer any questions you have. But I'll start out with the DHS budget. We talked about this. We added $200,000 for the out-of-home placements. Again, we took that from highway, and I'll explain how that affected highway as we move down. There was a memo in your packet from Tim and I talking about some positions that will have to be, or we'll see if you're willing to add them through a couple programs, but that won't affect our levy. Those will be all Medicare programs. So we'll bring that forward through the committee and then through the county board to see if you approve that. I think next month we're going to be able to bring that. CJS, we've been working on this before I got here, trying to get those positions so they're away from being contracted positions. Currently, we have one left in Lutheran Social Services, which we only put the money into the contracted service line for now, because if we don't receive the amount of money we're thinking, we're obviously not going to be able to bring this position on as a full-time county employee. But if we can, I'll bring that resolution forward and bring that through the board before the budget's done. The next one I have to talk about is county clerk. Corp counsel. Looked at the wrong one. Corp counsel, we added $10,000 into that above, and that's to try and get some contracted services to relieve some of the workload in there. Obviously, as everything has gone up, and we've talked about that, it hits every department. That's why we're adding an IT person. It affects corp counsel. So we're trying to see if there's some services they can contract out. But my strategy would be to try to add some money in there over the years and see if we can get a part-time or full-time position in there eventually. Hard thing with corp counsel, it's all tax levy. So you know how difficult it is to add levy to to departments and try and get a fully funded levied position takes a couple years normally. Go to child support. They actually received some additional funding through the budget. That went down a little bit. Extension, we added $5,000 for that community development educator position that was eliminated the year before. That was approved by the county board. Finance, I just put this in here because I always like to give an example. The only real change in here was a health insurance plan. So it was either someone going from a single to a family or not having insurance and getting insurance. And some of these small departments that can really affect their budgets. Highway is what I talked about earlier. We took $200,000 out of there, put it into DHS, but offset that with $300,000 of sales tax money. So they actually gained $100,000 in their total ability to spend on the highway. The next one is IT. That's that position. 2 years ago, we put some money in there to get that position. I think we put half the funding in. And then this year we put additional half funding in there for that position. If you go down to registered deeds, because of the boom in the housing industry, there increased revenue. So we're able to offset levy with about $30,000 in that department. Sheriff's Department, we really didn't do anything except for PCR. Treasury. So this is kind of how this works. So the economy is booming as far as interest rates being low, which really helps our registered deeds. It brings in some additional revenue to P&Z because they're so busy, but it really hits our treasurer. The way that hits us is our interest income. When interest is zero or very, very low, it really affects that. We put quite a bit of money in there last year, and we put an additional $50,000 in levy in there this year, or not to offset the levy. So we're hoping that starts turning around. We'll see how that kind of goes. Zoning, again, we took $10,000 from there from increased revenue. Then the general county, it's a really small increase, but I wanted to point this out. Supervisor Thornton asked that we look at how much we're contributing to CVIC. That's that incubation that they talked about, that we just got done talking about. And we upped that to $3,700, which would add up to $10,000 per year for that facility, and that equals what Eau Claire County's given. So it's kind of being a good partner with them. Let's see what else. Budget adjustment. If you see that, that's just wages. We upped that a little bit. And then insurance. Insurance always seems like it's going up one way or the other, but for the $25,000, that was for property and liability insurance. And then one thing we did that I don't think we've done in the past is there's the levy limits, and then there's exemptions from the levy limits. So there's two areas that we're exempt from levy limits. One is libraries, and one is county aid bridge. The libraries, we really have no choice but to pay that. I've never seen it go up this high before, but the reason it went up so high is we pay off circulation. So who's ever using, that's how much we have to pay towards. Circulation went way down, but their expenditures stayed the same because they stayed open. And so the cost for doing that obviously went way up. We really don't have a choice to do that. I said exactly to get stuck in Jackie's budget, and she gets hollered at when it comes in high, but it's really not her fault. So there's not a whole lot we can do with that. County aid bridges. Again, this number can go up and down quite a bit. This has to do with townships, and if they have a culvert of a certain size to get replaced or a bridge, and this only goes out to the towns. So if the towns participate into this program, which all our towns do, that the levy goes for that to get reimbursed. So those are two things outside the levy limits. So any questions on that? And then the last page is the positions. So I'll just kind of go through them. So the technical support analysts, the first two are DOA, Department of Administration, but in the IT division. One of those is going to do the general IT, if you will, and then the other one's going to work in the RWC under IT. The next one, the EPI position, This does not require approval by the county board, but I definitely wanted to make sure you know that it was in here. I actually have authority to do this. I think this is something we should really look at. I feel more comfortable this going through the process. Angie did a good job presenting this at Public Health, and she included it in I believe, a PowerPoint and also in the budget. So everybody's aware of that. But if you don't want this position, the public hearing would be the time to eliminate that if you wish to do that. And I don't know why it's set up like that, but it is. But it's something I think we should probably talk about. HR assistant. So this is the memo we put out early, and it had to do with Tony when she presented her budget, and Larry from Facilities and Parks, Tony's HR director. When they presented, they both needed some additional time, some additional hours. Tony really for her for going to self-fund it, and then Larry really from just an increase in need. So they presented it separately, and I had a bright idea to work together. So I had those two sit in a room and figure it out. No, they work really well together. So, but we've done this before. We did this with veterans in the clerk's office for a shared position. We talked many times about how tough it is to have a part-time position, try to keep the person, train the person. So if we can do things like this, I think it really helps. But unbeknownst to Tony at the time, one of her positions resigned, and then that's why you'll see in the resolution that before the board tonight, that we look at starting that position immediately and then go to the shared position after the first of the year. But we'll talk more about that during the resolution. And then the last one on the list here is the community development educator that I talked about for UW. And then if the county board would pass, the resolutions coming forward in the next month or two for the CJS position, and then it's actually 4 positions for DHS. We'd add that to this list, obviously, so you guys can see everything. That's all I have, unless there's any questions. And please, Lori and I are always available at any time if you want to ask questions outside too.
Supervisor Steele, did you have a question?
Yeah. On that epi position, it was talked about when we added that position to utilize that person to all departments.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, that is still the plan. It's just the pandemic. He's only been part-time, and the pandemic's just taken all his time.
Well, I just see the health department up there, and I was.
Yeah, that's where it is. But she mentioned that in her presentation too, with the committee, and she'll be available too to answer questions if you guys have questions. But yeah, that's the plan, because they can really do some really good work, and I think there's areas in the county that they can really be utilized.
Any other questions from the board? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Department reports, financial update, Lori Sweevelover.
Hi, everybody. Okay. All right. I'm going to be kind of quick because I know you guys are. Sorry, wrong one. All right. I know you guys have a busy agenda, so I'll just be pretty quick this time. Honestly, it's most of the same things that I've talked about before. General County, we're still waiting for our state shared revenues to come in. That usually comes in November from the state. The county clerks, we pay the county clerk the expense of that 90.6 is because we had the libraries. We pay that in February of each year to all the libraries, so it's a huge dollar amount, as you can see from the Randy's presentation. The county treasurer, again, it's that interest that we've talked about. Currently, we're at 32% for year to date for interest, which we would hope to be at 50% at this time, so we're really low there. And child support, just as normal, that is because we get the revenue on a monthly or on a quarterly basis from them. And here's just a few of the slides that are some more information from this, what I just talked about. And there's the graph. Now we're heading into special revenue funds. We'll talk about public health. Just as before, they expense in 1 month and then we get paid the following month. So those are just outstanding monies that are coming from the state. ADRC is in that same boat with the state. And RWC, remember we have a delay of 2 months for billing for them because of Medicaid for RWC. So that's part of our issue there. Jail assessment, I know at the last one I talked about this, but we had a $60,000 jail shower project that we did at the beginning of the year that went and used fund balance. So that's why it's a large expense for a percentage. And then the sales tax property, you know how that is. I get that money 2 months in behind. So what we have in here right now is through really April. So any questions there so far? Okay. Here is our COVID funding, and this is something that Randy was originally giving this information to you. And so we decided that we were just going to throw it together on our financial report. So you'll see over on the left-hand side, that was the COVID funding that we're getting from the state to help public health pay for that. And over on the right-hand side is a review of the sales tax that we've gotten for 2021 so far. As you can see, we're at 10.68% right now. So yay. We need money, right? Helpful projects. All right, another area that we talked about many times with you guys is that American Rescue Plan funds. And I just wanted to show here is that the revenue, we got that money in for 6.2 million. We've got a little bit of interest, which is really small, you know, because we're not getting high interest rates right now, but we are still getting some interest. But we wanted to make sure that you guys know that we're still waiting for clarification from the IRS about what is an allowable expense. So hopefully we'll be getting that in the next month or so. And let's see here, and on July 20th, you guys had approved the guidelines and procedures for the allocation of those funds. Any questions about ARPA? Okay, the next item here is the debt service. And this is actually our debt payments that we have actually paid for, or that we're paying for in 2021. And just a reminder that 314 right there, that top, not the 306, but the 314, that bond payment is already paid off. So right now we have 2 bonding events that we're paying off on. So we're in good shape there. At the end of this year, we'll have $8,615,000 as remaining outstanding debt. Capital project funds. Remember, this is how we account for money when we go and borrow that money in bonding. We go and put the actual projects for those, that bonding money into this account. So then we know that we're accounting for all the expenses. And right now we don't have any expenses in yet because the highway department is working on projects. I know, I think it was in August, we've actually did transfer some money over to the highway department for projects completed. So all we have right now is just revenue for interest income that we have for those funds. Internal service funds. The main one that I wanted to talk about I talk about every time is that self-funded liability insurance. You're going to see that the revenues are way down. We haven't done the insurance allocation that we always usually do in October or November. So that's why it looks so in the red right now. And last but not least are our enterprise and trust agency funds. So there's our land development fund. As you can see, we've just had some expenses out. That was for that tourism. And we paid some out to the Chippewa County Economic Development Corporation. And then the dog license fund. Those are fees that we get for dog licenses. and then our definitions, which have been on the previous reports. Any questions? I know I went fast, but and just remember, if you don't think of something right now and you come up with something later, that Randy and I are always available if you guys have questions, okay?
Okay, thank you, Laurie. Okay, county highway corridor mapping and raise grant application. Brian?
Good evening. So I'm just here tonight to kind of bring everybody up to speed on a project that we've been working on a little bit behind the scenes here. Talk about a resolution that you'll be seeing at your next meeting and some things that are going on with Highway T. So apologize, some of you are hearing this for about the third time tonight, but I'll try and brush through it quickly. The stakeholders on the project, Chippewa County, Eau Claire County, the city of Eau Claire, and the towns of Union and Wheaton. We recognized that there's going to be some need for future expansion out there. And one thing we needed to do is control the expansion in a way to preserve the corridor if we ever want to widen Highway T. And so that's what this is about, is a study to adopt a survey map and file that at the county so that we can preserve that and prevent additional driveways and buildings from being built in that area. So in early 2020, we signed the agreement with the other entities. And then along the way, we submitted a raise grant application for construction funding, which I'll talk about tonight as well. The project's in the Chippewa Eau Claire metropolitan urban area. The southern limits, basically Highway 312 or the North Crossing. But part of that north of North Crossing is already improved to 4 lanes. So we're looking more at the area of Alpine Road for the southern limits. And then in Chippewa County, it would be up technically to Highway X is what we're looking at, but everything north of 29 Pines at 33rd Street, 33rd Avenue is fine. So we're just kind of stopping there. So the project is in 2.3 miles in Chippewa County, 1.2 miles in Eau Claire County. And of the whole 3.5, about 1.7 of that is in the city of Eau Claire. Part of the city is in Chippewa County at that location. Functionally, it's classified as a minor arterial, which is a pretty high volume road. Basically, that means it serves a major economic activity center. It's not ideally meant to have direct access from driveways, and it connects other arterials, which in this case are Highway 29 and the North Crossing. It's one of the busiest roads in the county at 6,800 vehicles per day, and it's growing pretty rapidly. Only Highway S on the north side of Chippewa here by the new roundabout has more at 8,000, and X out in Lafayette at 7,500. So very busy road. The projected traffic volume is going to be much higher with all the development we're going to see out there. Currently, there's about 25% of the vehicles are trucks, and we think that'll increase also. Since it's in a very agricultural area and very good proximity to the city and I-94, we feel it's pretty primed to develop out there, so we're just setting up to address that. And we do know that some of the prospective businesses that looked at locating out in that area have stated that the infrastructure is a concern to them when they chose to go to a different location. Safety is obviously a big concern here with the growing amount of traffic out there. The at-grade access points throughout are becoming increasingly unsafe. We've heard from residents in the public meetings that when they're waiting to turn into their driveway, waiting for oncoming traffic, they have some close calls with vehicles coming up behind them. So it's getting to be more of a problem out there. And eventually, the access at the intersections isn't going to be adequate. The trucks that are trying to cross those intersections are going to have delays and safety issues trying to cross. And so improving the safety is going to require additional right-of-way, and that's part of this process, is identifying what right-of-way is needed. Obviously, like I said, we're going to need more capacity. We want to be able to plan better at the county and at the cities in terms of what development we're going to see out there. That'll help us when we're issuing driveway permits and things. And then the expansion's already begun, so on the north and south ends of this corridor, it's already beginning, and the writing's on the wall that it's just going to keep moving further. The benefits, we want to document and address the conditions. It's important early on to identify any constraints that we're going to see out there with wetlands, utilities, and other environmental issues. Document and address safety and operational concerns. Obviously, the high ADT and projecting the future ADT traffic volumes is going to be important. ADT is average daily traffic. We want to document and address local concerns of the citizens and other officials. We'll be holding 2 public meetings by the time we're done. We've already had one, which I'll talk about in a bit. And the input we get in those meetings will be important in determining the final corridor layout. And then identify the conceptual options to preserve the corridor. And that will assist our municipalities in long-range planning of the land use. And the end product will be to develop the preliminary design and right-of-way plat to file at the county. So we looked at 3 alternative layouts. Basically, all of them are going to a 4-lane divided highway with a shared use bike and pedestrian path. On the southern end, there's a Union Pacific Railway crossing at grade right now that we'll be looking at doing a grade separation to improve safety. And looking at all the intersections at 10th, 20th, and 30th. Kind of individually look at those, whether it's going to be signalized or roundabouts or some other kind of intersection control. The first public involvement meeting was back on June 28th. We had in-person and online people attend that. We presented the 3 corridor layouts, and we also presented a no-build alternative. And what that was basically to show what the driveways could look like if our minimum spacing was used and there was driveways throughout, which is obviously not what we want, but that could be what we would see if we didn't do anything here. And then all the attendees were invited to comment. We got a lot of good feedback there, a lot of good input. The next one will be next Monday at 29 Pines at 4 to 5 p.m. For a presentation, and then 5 to 6:30 p.m. for an open forum. And everybody from the county board is invited to attend. Jackie's created a meeting, so if there's a quorum, we're covered that way. So, and if there's one thing I want to stress, it's that this is not the public involvement process for the construction project. That'll be a whole separate process. So this is only for the corridor mapping. At this time, there is no construction funding or final design or right-of-way funding. We're continuing to search for funding sources. There's hopefully going to be different grant opportunities that we'll be eligible for if we don't get this first one. But otherwise, we went into this knowing that construction could be 10 or more years out. We just wanted to preserve the corridor. Well into the study, we became aware of an opportunity for a funding program that may be a fit. It's called the Federal Rebuilding and American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Act, RAISE program. That can fund $25 million for a project with about $1 billion available nationwide this year. So Eau Claire County decided to be the lead agency on this. So it's technically in their name, but all of us are stakeholders as well. SCH was brought on to prepare the grant application because they've done successful grant applications before. And we submitted back on July 12th. We won't know until likely November 22nd if we've gotten it. We're waiting to hear if we've made the initial round of cuts. We do know that Senator Baldwin's office has been involved in urging them to choose us, and basically all the Congress people and legislators from the state and federal government, tons of different businesses, all kinds of people wrote letters of support for the project. So we're kind of waiting to see right now. So the planning and mapping project cost share was 30% Chippewa County, 30% Eau Claire County, and 30% city, with the towns each contributing 5%. We haven't determined the final cost share for the construction project. There's too many unknowns right now. I've used 1/3 as the county's cost share, and I kind of view that as a worst case scenario. I think both counties are on board with that, and the city's generally on board with that, but yet we don't know if the towns are going to have a share in that. So I picked 1/3 as the worst case scenario, and hopefully we would see it be less than that. If we're awarded the RAISE grant funds, we estimate the total project to be $33 million, with Chippewa County share likely to be $2.8 million. So of that, about $830 would be right-of-way costs and design, which would be ineligible for the RAISE grant, and then construction would be $1.97 million. So moving forward, the next thing we'll need to do is adopt the corridor plat map. And so that'll be completed later this year, and we'll bring the ordinance amendment back to you guys, and we'll have to have another public hearing for that. So we'll have 2 meetings at the county board to adopt that plat map. And then if we're awarded the RAISE grant funds, the county needs to first decide if we're going to accept them. And so we've been working on a resolution to bring to highway committee next week and back to exec and county board at the next meetings to talk about if we're going to pledge that funding before we find out we get $25 million in funding and then later on decide we don't want to accept it. So it'd be nice to know ahead of time if we're all on board with that. So we've got a resolution drafted for that. And with that, that would also give Randy and I permission to move forward with agreements to keep things on track. That's part of that resolution. So it's an exciting project. If it ever gets built, hopefully it'll get built in my time here at least. And probably the biggest project I'll ever work on. So I'm excited about it. And this is really early on in the process, but I have to bring everybody up to speed on what's going on and try and get everybody's support. Any questions on it?
Mr. Schmidt?
I've got a couple of issues with this whole concept. One, it's going to push development all into the town of Wheaton, town of Howard, some of the best agricultural land in the county. And we're going to have more urban sprawl, and we're going to have more groundwater issues. And neither issue is being addressed right now. Our zoning is woefully inadequate to protect agricultural land. Out west, and the lake feed is at historic low levels. They're contemplating cutting water off for agriculture out there. The Ogallala Aquifer is going dry over the next number of years in a lot of areas. This land that gets enough natural rainfall is going to become more important in the next 20 to 40 years. The other issue I have is none of my constituents ever complain about that section of T. I get a lot of complaints on county roads up north that are too rough to drive on. Now we're going to take $2 million or $3 million tentatively, or not tentatively, perhaps out of our highway budget. What's that going to do to our roads up north? And when are we going to start looking at Cornell and New Auburn and Stanley for economic development? Everything happens down the south end of the county. You drive up through New Auburn, it looks like a ghost town darn near from out west. And it's sitting on a 4-lane highway. It's not that they don't have access. These are issues we need to be looking at, not just this one little corner of the county down here in the south end.
Yeah, I think what's driving this is that we know that the city of Eau Claire is going to annex this area sooner or later, and we have no corridor protected to control the development. Then they could lot it off however the developers want to lot it off with direct access to Highway T, and it's just not going to be safe if we get that kind of development out there.
But I understand that south of 29 is inevitable. But when you start going north too far, that's going to affect us. We need to be addressing that with our zoning codes and stuff. And there's been no conversation about that whatsoever on the county level that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah, this is only south of 29 as part of this.
But it's still going to affect the rest of us.
Can't really speak to the groundwater thing. I don't know. Dan's here.
Any other questions?
That's just my reservation, so.
No other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to business items. Resolution 3621, supervisory redistricting plan, and I'll turn this over to the clerk.
Resolution number 36-21, resolution to approve tentative supervisory redistricting plan. Now therefore be it resolved that the attached tentative supervisory redistricting plan is hereby approved. The county clerk is directed to forward this plan to the municipalities and towns within Chippewa County to determine whether wards are to be created or adjusted. And be it further resolved that the municipalities and towns are requested to develop, approve, and forward their ward plans to the county by October 18th, 2021, so that the final redistricting plan can be presented for public hearing and approval by the county board on November 9th, 2021. Forwarded to the county board by the redistricting committee.
Okay, do I hear a resolution to, or a motion to approve?
I would like to make a motion to approve resolution number 36-21, striking the words "the attached" from line 33 and adding option 2 after redistricting plan on line 34.
Okay, so there's a motion to amend. Is there?
We got to have a motion to approve as it's presented, and then there would be a motion to amend. So we just need a motion to essentially get it on the floor.
Gotcha. Sorry. Jump the gun.
So
Second.
we got the second. Good.
We need to, she needs to,
I'll make a motion
Yes.
to approve.
You made a motion to approve, and Carrie Ives seconded it. Okay. No, discussion. All right.
I will make
Excuse me.
a motion to
Amend?
amend resolution number 36-21, striking the words "the attached" from line 33 and adding option 2 after redistricting plan located on line 34.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to amend. Discussion?
Can we back up a second?
Okay.
On line 34?
Yes, on line 34, after the words redistricting plan, adding option 2.
Number 29 has option 1. Wouldn't you just take it off up there?
Doug gave it to
Okay. I think it's line 29. Okay.
29, yeah.
Thank you.
I might have a different version.
no, it's on line 4.
Well,
34.
Yeah, that's
Scroll down just a little
go up
bit.
to 29, go up to 29, it says option 1.
What does it say, option 1?
Yes, it does. It says right on, line 29 says option 1.
Yeah.
That's accurate, because the redistricting committee did forward option 1. So that part's accurate,
Yeah.
under 29. That's where they want to get it reflected.
Can't change what the committee did.
You want option 2, not.
We will confer with corporate counsel. Are we then?
No, but option 1 we approved as a committee.
Oh, I see.
That's action that's been taken.
The amendment?
Changed it.
Oh, okay.
Well, do we have?
So then you would
On the-
run
Yeah.
on
Supervisor.
34.
Yep.
So,
May I repeat the amendment?
Would you? Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
repeat the
My
amendment.
motion is to amend resolution number 36-21, striking "the attached" from line 33 and adding option 2 after redistricting plan on line 34.
And that was seconded by Supervisor Schmidt.
Yep.
Are we good? Any discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Schmidt.
And from what I gather, Jackie, all the municipalities are okay with this change or in favor of it?
I can't speak that all of them are okay with it. I did not speak to all of them. I spoke with the redistricting committee members.
Okay.
all of them with the exception of Town of Estella, which she sent me an email this evening. Everyone else is happy with the changes and likes option 2. Town of Estella does not like option 2 because it does break up their township into 2 pieces, which I understand their concern. The way that it would divide though would be north of 64 would be District 2, south of 64, no.
Yeah, you're right.
And then south of 64 would be District 6. They're a smaller township, so there's just some concerns there that they would have an initial ballot style for elections and have 2 supervisory districts. But other than that, all the other committee members I spoke to prefer option 2 over option 1.
Any other super?
My understanding of one of the important reasons that option number 2 is more desirable is because that ratio that Dennis and Doug described to us. So option 2 has the deviation of 8.43, while option 1 has a deviation of 11.6. I believe there's additional work that has to be done if we were to go with option 1, but Doug or Dennis could explain that in more detail if anyone wanted to understand that.
Any other supervisors? Supervisor Ives?
Mr. Chair, I was just wondering, could I ask Mr. Cleary or not your name, sir? I just have a question.
Go ahead, ask.
So number 9 and 18, why is it so choppy? Like in the middle of 18, 9 has like some little bitty spots. Like that looks confusing to me.
Tracy, can you bring up that Chippewa Falls?
Oh.
Yeah, right there.
This portion right here is actually the town of Wheaton,
Okay.
surrounded by the city of Chippewa Falls after
okay.
annexations have occurred. So we, first criteria was to keep the municipalities together.
Gotcha.
And so that's the reason why that looks choppy like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Supervisor Steele?
Yeah, just so I'm clear on how I'm voting on this. Why don't we just put 1 and 2 together or something like that? We are not passing Plan 1 or Plan 2 right now, right?
The tentative plan, yes.
It's a tentative plan.
We need to pick.
Oh, so we need to pick right now.
Yes.
So in other words, the line 29, you want to eliminate option 1?
That's what we as a committee passed. That's action taken.
All right.
That's all that is.
Just want to make sure.
Yep. Yeah, we passed option 1 initially prior to having the information that allowed us to get the information related to the Stanley prison that allowed to get us the deviation down in option 2 and address some of the concerns that Stanley had. So Doug and Dennis came up with option 2 after that meeting. It has to do with the really tight timelines we're dealing with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Again, we're discussing the amendment. Any questions? Any more discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
This is on the amendment.
This will be on the amendment.
Yes.
Okay, then at this time you would vote on the amendment.
Striking 1 and adding 2.
Yes. Yep.
11 yes, 0 no. So amendment passes.
Okay, so the amendment is passed, and now we will go to the original resolution as amended. Any questions or discussion? Are you ready? Oh, excuse me, Supervisor Steele.
Just to bring that up, I was going to ask the same thing that
Supervisor Ives asked, and you know, it's, I know that it's still a town, but are we kind of, it should be at least connected. You know, I mean, we got a big war going on down in Madison over these lines and stuff, and what are we doing?
Well, the city will just annex it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's, the city needs to
At
clean
the
up
moment,
their
it just
act.
ended up that way.
I can't hear you.
So someday the city of Chippewa Falls may decide to annex them, and then they would be part of the city, but it just ended up that they, you know, that's the way the boundaries ended up occurring.
Yeah, it created over the decades, as the annexations occurred into the city of Chippewa Falls, it created these islands. You cannot do this anymore underneath the state statutes. They won't allow you to create a town island, and this is a great example of why, because it's very confusing. All these, I'll just speak from my personal experience, all the people that live in that particular area right there, they love being in the town of Wheaton because they don't have to follow the city of Chippewa Falls rules. You know? But if you walk up and down those roads, it appears that they live in the city limits, and they don't. But that first criteria that we followed for creating these lines was to keep the municipalities together. And so we really didn't have an issue with keeping that little portion right there within the town of Wheaton, because that's where it has been.
I just to continue. My point being is I agreed and I voted for it, and we cut the town of Estella in half, and we're doing this down in the city.
We can't get this population up to town of Stella to help them out.
No, I'm serious.
And
we're cutting that in half, and you got this thing that's an island out here in the middle of the city.
Well, it kept them intact.
If I could.
They are part of, they are part of.
Yes, but Estella's all one too. You know, I mean, that's, to me, we shouldn't be doing that. That's me talking.
Okay. You have something to add to here, Mr. Schmidt?
Just the concept, Buck, is, I know exactly what you're saying, I thought the same thing, but if you were to make it neat and clean, you would be adding ballot types again, because you'd have the town of Wheaton officers voting for a supervisor that is in the city of Chippewa Falls. You'd have another little ballot type for that little area from a few residents. So it looks ugly on the map, but in reality, it's simpler. And you'd be creating confusion at the town level by creating more ballot types for that town.
Well, you're doing Estella too.
Well, it's not, well, that's apples and oranges. That's that problem, and this is this problem. This is caused by the city of Chippewa Falls. That's beyond our control.
Well, I can tell you I campaigned there, and it's interesting. One door is in and the next one is not. Mr. Falkenberg, did you want to throw something in here?
Well, part of the reason with this one, that little area of Wheaton would make District 18 too large for our parameters. And then number 9 becomes a little bit small. I tried to work it that way to begin with, and then working with the city of Chippewa Falls, we were able to figure out a method to keep Wheaton together and the city together. And then they're able to do what they need to do with their aldermanic districts inside the city.
It's also helpful to know that the redistricting committee, that was one of their priorities, was keeping municipalities together, and that's a perfect example. So we prioritized a number of items and then voted on those so that they could then create these options for us.
Well,
Okay, Mr. Clary?
Tracy, could you bring up option number 1, please? The big map. So I understand completely what you're talking about, but because in this map, this looks great down here for Estella, but right here, Birch Creek is cut.
Yeah, I know it.
So no matter how we adjusted the lines up here, we're always going to end up with one of these municipalities being cut in some fashion. Down here we had Delmar that was great. We had to slice them apart in order to get Stanley on its own and to work that prison in here, which allowed us to get this compaction down here. So that criteria really comes in. Yes, municipality lines first, and then secondarily we looked at that compactness out there as well. So this one was one of the concerns, as well as the prison population and kind of carving out the town of Birch Creek up here. So when we looked at it and we were able to get that data adjusted down here, it allowed us to make a natural break in Estella along that Highway 64 corridor. I get what you're saying. It's not a perfect plan, but it's as close to perfect as we could get it with the criteria that we were using in order to make this work out. Some people are not going to be happy with it, and some people are going to be happy with it. We're not going to be able to make everybody happy. But at least the criteria that we used comes true within this, within option 2, closer to what we need to be at, and it really gets us below that 10% threshold. Although, there are the ability to go above the 10%, but this one gets us well below the 10% and helps us. Our option 2 gets us down there.
Okay. Any other discussion? What? Oh. Okay. Buck?
Yeah, just to follow up, option 1 and option 2 have that same setup down in the city.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The boundaries down in the city of Chippewa Falls.
Yeah, you didn't change those.
We did not.
Well, and the other thing is there's a piece of yellow out there hanging by itself out in the town of Wheaton. That's not attached to the city. I guess it is the city.
It is attached to the city. There's a really fine strip of land in there that goes along County Highway N. And that was annexed in by the city, so it follows through with what we have done in the past with following those lines. So that piece right there, if I understood it right, the city annexed that in for future purposes, but there's a little strip of land here that's not coming out in here that this is attached.
Six of one, half dozen of the other. Any other discussion? Then we'd call the vote on your electronic. Those in favor of the resolution as amended would vote yes. Those opposed would vote no. Can release.
10 yes.
We will move on to Resolution 3721, September as every month. Tim Easter.
Resolution number 37-21, resolution to proclaim September 2021 as Recovery Month in Chippewa County. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the month of September 2021 as Recovery Month in Chippewa County, encourages all of our county residents to support those in recovery from mental health and/or substance abuse issues, forwarded to the County Board by the Health and Human Services Board.
Hear from Mr. Easter.
Thanks, Jackie. I'd like to thank Supervisor Ives for bringing this forward to our attention. And I think the purpose of this is twofold. It's going to be to help reduce some of the stigma associated with the individuals that have that so they can go out and seek treatment, and also just to celebrate those folks who are in full recovery. And what I'd like to say is secrets lose their power in the light of day. Likewise, addiction and mental illness thrives in darkness and isolation. These are not moral failings or something to do with lack of willpower. These are brain diseases, a physical issue no different than diabetes or a heart disease. We need to continue to reduce the stigma. I think we're doing a pretty good job of it in this county. It was not long ago, and still could be happening today, that folks with substance use disorders were getting kicked out of treatment for being symptomatic. What symptomatic means is they're still using. Compare that with someone suffering from type 2 diabetes who goes into the office and tells them they've been on a strict Snicker bar and Mountain Dew diet. Doc doesn't kick them out, welcomes them, they talk about the issue and they move on. And I think that's what we're talking about here is welcoming those people, even when they're using, and setting the table for them when they're ready to get help. This is some of the harm reduction strategies, and this is some of the stuff we're doing with our Take a Stand Against Meth committee as well. In a letter dated January 9th, 2017 from the Executive Office of the President, Office of National Drug Control Policy, Michael Botticelli, the subject is changing federal terminology regarding substance use and substance use disorders. This is pertaining to that, but this is something simple. It talks about substance use disorder, the most severe form of which is referred to as addiction, is a chronic brain disorder from which people can and do recover. Nonetheless, sometimes the terminology used in the discussion of substance use can suggest the problematic uses of substances and a result of a personal failing, that people choose the disorder or they lack the willpower or character to control their substance use. However, research shows addictive substances can lead to dramatic changes in brain function and reduce a person's ability to control his or her use. And then repeated use of the substances powerfully alters brain chemistry and the function of brain circuitry to create a neurobiological disorder. And also what we know is that people with substance use disorders are viewed more negatively than people with physical or psychiatric disorders. Research found that even highly trained substance use disorder and mental health clinicians were significantly more likely to assign blame and believe that an individual should be subjected to punitive jail sentence rather than therapeutic measures when the subject of a case vignette was referred to as a substance abuser rather than as a person with a substance use disorder. In a public perception study, the terms abuse was found to have a high association with negative judgments and punishment. Negative attitudes among health professionals have found to adversely affect quality of care and subsequent treatment outcomes. Shame and concerns about social, economic, and legal consequences of disclosing a substance use disorder may deter help seeking among those who, with substance use, and that includes mental health. And I would bet Randy's last check that there's probably somebody in this room that's in recovery. You know, and we need to celebrate that as well. This is no small measure, but yet a step in the right direction for our community. Yes, people do recover. These miracles happen every day. These are our mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, brothers, and sisters. These are people we know and we love. So thanks, everybody, for your support.
Can I ask you to remain? Well, if they have any questions. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second, Supervisor Steele. Okay, now we can open up this questions or discussion. Any questions for Tim or? Yes.
I just had a question. I know we had a resolution one other time for something, so it occurs every year at the same time. Is there a way to possibly change this so it happens every year so we don't forget every September to possibly do this? Or not?
Say what? Yeah, go ahead.
For resolutions, we'd have to do it every year, but I can put it on my calendar to remind us.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks much, everybody. Have a good night.
So motion's been made and seconded. The discussion is now ended. Those in favor would vote yes. Those opposed would vote no. Yep.
11 yes.
Okay. We'll move on to Resolution 3821, the full-time shared positions, Human Resources and Facility and Parks Division. Since we're going to have a little bit more here, I would seek a motion to approve.
So move.
You got to read it. I would think that would be appropriate. We'll have her read it by title.
Resolution number 38-21, resolution to create a full-time shared position in the Human Resources and Facilities and Parks Divisions of the Department of Administration entitled Human Resources Assistant, Administrative Assistant 3.
Okay.
That motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give my spiel and then I'll ask Larry and Tony to come up and talk about their part. I briefed on this or talked about it earlier, but Larry and Tony both came forward with needing some additional hours for Tony, it was for the self-funded health insurance, and for Larry, it was just increased service need. I asked them to kind of work through the process of sharing this position. Again, it's difficult to have part-time position. Larry mentioned at one point, if it was a part-time, it would be very difficult for the tasks that they're going to have this person do, to train the person, and then if they would have turnover, they'd have to repeat it, and it would probably not be worth the time to do that. So I think this is a good solution. Halfway or 3/4 of the way through this process, Tony unfortunately found out one of our great employees was leaving us for growth, which we're going to miss her, but we wish her all the luck. But that really created some concerns because we got into the year coming up. We're going to self-funded. We got open enrollment coming. So that really puts a crunch on her department. But really what that does is it affects all our employees. That's the department that's responsible for having a good outcome when we do these types of things, when we go over to self-funded, when we do open enrollment. So we want our employees to have a good experience with that. So they got together, they worked it out, figured out what the hours could be. But we would, if this passes, the position for HR would start immediately. And then at the beginning of next year, they'd go to the shared position. So if it's okay with you, I'd ask Larry if you'd come up first, and then Tony after that.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Larry Ritzinger, Director of Facilities. So, yeah, some reasoning behind the request I can share with you tonight is really just an increase in work demand over the years. We've just seen kind of a steady increase from year to year to year, and some of that shows up in the explanation in the resolution with the growth in the parks. The reservation numbers from year to year, as well as the revenue increases. What we see is we've got peak workloads throughout the year. In regards to the parks, we actually have about 80 to 90% of our park reservations happen within the first 2 weeks of the year. Everybody's after the good sites. That's when the reservations open up. So we just get hammered during that time. So that we really struggle during those first couple of weeks. And then when you get into the camping season, I would say it slows down, but it doesn't slow down because then there's numerous questions on folks looking for reservations and campsite sizes and all the different amenities. So we're really busy throughout the spring and summer and early fall with that. So those are pretty busy times for us there. The other area that we see some peak use is the firearms range. Coincidentally, we're shut down right now, so we're doing pretty good in that area, but we hope to get that open pretty soon. But we see that in the spring when it warms up from April through, I would say, November. We're busy. In October and November, we're really busy. We just get swamped on that with a lot of usage, a lot of maintenance, a lot of calls, a lot of money collections in doing that part of it as well. The other thing I can share is that we have capital projects throughout the year, and this administrative position picks up a lot of that work for us. She assists from scheduling meetings to assisting with advertising and bid documents and processing contracts, and just numerous things. So when we get into some busy times with the projects, that overlaps with some of our other busy times, then we even struggle more. So we try to develop kind of a load level with our work, do the best we can with that, but we certainly do struggle with times. The other thing we've seen a continual increase with is our maintenance requests. Back in 2014, 2015, we implemented some maintenance software. And since that time, I think our requests have went up about 25% in the numbers of requests that we process. So this position is responsible for receiving a lot of those calls and requests via telephone or email, generating work orders. And then from there, they go out to the maintenance manager or park manager, who then work through that. But then this administrative assistant has to close all those work orders out and then generate the reports that we utilize to manage the workflow. And unfortunately, the maintenance work order system is low on the priority because you have to answer the phone for the park reservations and you have to get the projects, all that stuff done in a timely manner. And if we're unable to get the maintenance work orders processed, we're unable to get decent reports for the managers to work off of. And then we struggle a bit trying to manage the load, and we, probably could give better customer service if we had a little better information to work with. So this request, we've been talking about it for at least a couple years, and then we've got into the COVID era and everything was up in the air. And I think the employee engagement exercises that we work through really kind of brings this out again, just highlighted it even more. And here we are today. So that's about all I have to offer.
Okay. Any questions from the supervisors on this issue? Tony, you're up next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Hofelder, for anyone who is not aware. I'm the Human Resources Director. I'm going to talk a little bit about the HR part of this position. And I think first what I'm going to say is kind of a little bit of what Randy said, is to kind of take you through how this happened. And the reason is when we put this resolution together, it was probably the most difficult document I've ever put together. It was hard for us who know the departments and know exactly what we're trying to do. I can't imagine what it's like for you guys to kind of read through this and try to understand it. And so really what happened is there was obviously a need because of us going to self-funding. Kathy in my office, she's the human resource assistant, currently works 19 hours a week as an LTE. So she ebbs and flows between 3 days and 2 days a week. And so our request was to Randy is to increase to make her part-time. So it would go from 19 hours a week to 28 hours. And we felt like that would assist us in being able to really effectively communicate and handle the benefits. Kathy in the position would not handle the benefits, so we're not increasing her hours so she can do the work. What it was going to allow us to do is offset some of the work that the generalist did, that's the expert in benefits, to be able to pass some of that work on to Kathy. So payroll specifically and recruitments, some of those would get moved over and fill in those hours. And we felt like that would help us to be able to manage better a self-funded plan, as well as all the different things that we're hoping to do because we're going self-funded. So that request came through the budget process, and then Larry's request came, and that's when the creativity started to happen. Larry and I work right together. He even brought up Kathy. He didn't know that I was having this conversation with Larry, and so it ended up just being a perfect fit. And Kathy herself, and I know we don't always pick a person when we're talking about this, but it is a factor. And if it was not the right person, it might not have been the right fit. And I really think this person will work well between the two departments. It's the same pay grade, so obviously it fits there, and just the communication that we have with Larry. And then as Randy said, all of a sudden we had a loss of the HR generalist, and it is the person who is the expert in our benefits, who handles all the benefit communication, has great relationships with our staff. And so we have gone out to replace that position. Alex's last day was August 31st. We have a new person coming on board on October 4th. Unfortunately, the entire pool of applicants, especially the finalists that were qualified for the position, do not have benefit background. So there will be a large training curve in the area of benefits for the new generalist. Fortunately, I have a lot of experience. Obviously, we know Randy has some experience, so I'm not worried about that. It's really just the time. And so this opportunity wouldn't have even been here to ask Kathy to go full-time if it weren't for this already future position for January. So again, to restate, it'll be September 20th. So if you approve tonight, September 20th, Kathy will start full-time. She'll go from 19 hours to 40 hours in HR. And then come first of the year, she'll back off to just 28 hours a week in HR and then work the remaining hours to full-time for Larry. And he and I have already kind of talked about what that schedule could look like and how the communication will work. So that's all of it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay. We will then call the vote. Those wishing to approve would press yes. Those approve would push no. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
11 yes, 0 no.
Okay. Resolution passes. Resolution 3921.
Resolution number 39-21, resolution to approve an intergovernmental cooperative agreement to implement a joint stormwater program for the Chippewa Falls urban area. Now therefore be it resolved that the county board does hereby approve the attached cooperative agreement to implement a joint stormwater program for the Chippewa Falls urban area. And be it further resolved that the county board chair and county administrator are hereby authorized to sign this intergovernmental agreement to implement and maintain a joint stormwater program to meet WPDES permit requirements in the Chippewa Falls urban area, recommended for approval by the Land Conservation and Forest Management Committee.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Go ahead.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Okay, we will call the vote.
Okay. Now I'm ready.
Wait. Okay, those wishing to approve, push yes. Those disapprove, no. Okay.
11 yes, 0 no.
Okay, we will move on to second reading, 03-21, ordinance to repeal and recreate animal waste ordinance.
This is the
Second reading.
So, I forget how we do it. It's been a while for ordinances.
We'll need a motion and a second.
Oh, do we? For this?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve.
Make a motion. Second.
And second by Supervisor Hauser. Discussion.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's been a while. Dan Masterpole, Land Conservation Forest Management Director's here to go through this again if you need to. I know we went through it pretty detailed last time, and I think even had a presentation last time, which is included in here, but he'll see if you guys have any questions.
Good evening. My name is Dan Masterpole. I'm the Director of the Department of Land Conservation and Forest Management. This is the second reading of the Ag Performance Standards Ordinance. It replaces our traditional manure storage ordinance. I provided a brief PowerPoint in August, and I can go back through that if the chair would prefer, or I could simply address any questions.
Questions? Okay.
It's up to you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Masterpole? Yes.
It's not a question, it's a comment, but I think we've heard from both farm organizations in strong support of this. The fact that we brought along the stakeholders, I think, is really important to note, and Dan has done a good job of doing that.
Any other questions or statements? Since this took so many years, just a historical perspective, the public came to us a number of years ago asking for a moratorium on CAFOs, which are the large farm animal units. And so our response to that was to research this. And after a lot of time by staff and a ton of time by corporate counsel and outside counsel, unfortunately, this ordinance has nothing to do with that now. But this is the best that we could come up with.
What this ordinance does is it establishes state performance standards that all cropland owners and livestock producers need to meet. It also establishes a requirement that if there is a public complaint against any of these producers, following state statutes, we need to provide 50 or 70% cost share to assist them in resolving those complaints. It also sets these standards for new livestock operations that are expanding. They have to meet the standards without cost share. I think of significance for the local farm organizations, they really wanted to have this type of a land use and pollution control ordinance that was locally administered and enforced with regulatory oversight by the board. They preferred, in the interest of local control, to have the county work with DNR, but not be principally reliant on them for enforcement.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. Those wishing to approve, yes. Those not approve, push no. Release.
9 yes, 2 no.
Okay. Agenda items for future consideration. You do come up with some, just get them to me, and we'll get them on. I am seeking a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your time.